He's right, it's a tough job. And one of the things that I wonder is if the state demographers' projections are used in helping establish the budget, because we all are talking about relatively small periods of time here, and they all affect our lives differently. But we have to be ready for the reality of what our state is going to be like and what the needs are. And so the flat spending is not a reality in what I've heard the state demographers say. And they're trying to prepare us for what is the reality of our population, the way that it is dispersed in the age groups, and the reality of how we're going to have to fund how we run a society. It doesn't go on zero. When people to me say, golly, I don't want to pay any more for transportation or this or that, I say, do you want to go and maintain the mile of road in front of your house? I don't think so. I think we have to be realistic. And I have a daughter who left Minnesota and went for education to the east and lived out of the country and has come back here. And I've worked with a licensing agency who happen to be with pharmacists, and they go out in their 20s and 30s. When they're going to raise families, they come back here. So there are some very good things about Minnesota, but we have to be ready to fund it. It isn't going to work if we aren't willing to help as communities to keep it going.
And one way, thank you, Pat, in one way, the best, and we're talking about different ways to raise revenue today, and I'm really listening so that I can represent you. The best way to raise new revenue is through job creation. That's the very best way for us to raise new revenue, through job creation. And one of the, I'm also one of the chief authors on a bill that would fund construction, the 10% of the state's portion of the Southwest Light Rail. We are projected to bring, I believe it's 60,000 new jobs to our area by 2030. And also there will be more development along the line as there has been along Hiawatha. So I agree with you, we have to make strategic investments. And one thing that studies are showing is that we do have some kids coming back here. Thank goodness my daughter's coming back from Vietnam. She's been teaching there. But many millennials are going to other cities. Denver has made significant investments in its infrastructure, and they are attracting the millennials. And so we are an aging population, and we do need people here to help support us. We're going to be very expensive as we get older, and so we do have to make some strategic investments, and I think the job creation in facilitating that is a very good one. Yes.
In that line, as we have witnessed this winter, broken pipes, broken water mains, we have to start throwing some money into the future of infrastructure repair. Our sewers and water lines are getting tremendously old, and we can't wait until they all fall apart or break up in every other winter for us to address those issues.
We do have the
But isn't that a city problem?
Well, we have to pay for it somewhere.
No, a city problem. I mean, we're a local city and we should pay for it. In Prairie, they've enacted a franchise tax just to do that.
And in Edina, they've decided that the residents should pay for it in front of their home.
And if you want to, I can take that on the side because I'm responsible for your sewers, your roads locally, and do have interesting talk. I don't want to get into it right here. But blame me, I love to talk about it.
Okay, so,
Exactly.
yes.
Don't we in Minnetonka, don't we spread any curb and gutter across the whole city? It's not.
Oh, the beauty of Minnetonka, one of the great things about living here is we do not assess for roads, curbs, or sewer. It's part of your taxes. You will not get hit by the curb and gutter.
Well, it's in your yard.
And could we, but you know, really, I really appreciate this conversation, and maybe James can hang around a little bit.
Take her offline.
Thank you, but I'm serious, I'm gonna be making some big moves. And you're right, some people will be angry with me no matter what I do, but I do wanna represent you, and so that's why I want to hear from as many of you as possible. Also, before you go, just a little reminder from the former teacher to please fill out your survey. That's another way that I can,
Explain where that 60,000 job number comes from. I I've heard that, I've heard different things.
Right, and you know
that-
what, Ken, I'm not saying it's creating 60,000 jobs, but that is, there's a particular, and I can get you the information on that, I can give you your contact information. That's a projection from the business community, yes.
Just overall, we live in a community that's facing major problems at all levels, and we all have to invest in it, so we all need to pay. And so that's what I need to say.
Big bottom line, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It just seems kind of odd to me that we are planning so carefully on our budget and trying to make it a balance, but yet we're contemplating giving back a property tax refund, spending the money for mailing, writing checks, personnel. It just doesn't make sense to me that we're just doing that because that is spending more state money to give us money back.
So you would disagree with the governor's property tax rebate? One thing that I
At this time, for sure.
I have, that's helpful to know, I have co-authored a bill that would reinstate something very similar to the homestead credit and the renter's credit. That would be another way to do it.
I would say, I want to just piggyback on what Mary Lou said, and that is, you know, the $500 back is great for someone that lives in greater Minnesota. That's a huge portion of what their taxes are, but percentage-wise, for those of us that live in the suburbs, it's not as great. So I think there's some inequality there as to how much money would go back as well, and I think it's kind of a goofy, kind of odd way of doing things.
So that would be, okay, all right, is that clear? And then you can.
Has the state looked at the idea of a state-run bank for paying down the budget deficit?
A state, I don't know.
Yeah, like
North Dakota.
How do you mean?
I guess North Dakota has a bank that, it's a state-run bank that they use to help pay for budget issues, and I'm wondering if that might be a useful tool to help pay down the deficit.
This administration hasn't, so that you're saying the state-run bank would go and do things like mortgages?
Yep.
Something I suppose you might say in competition with commercial.
This administration hasn't looked at that. I can do a little research for you and see if they ever have before, but not in my research.
And North Dakota does that?
North Dakota.
Okay, all right, I'll check into
And
that.
questions like that, be sure to leave a card with your name and address, and we are sure to get a response back.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay, now, because I'm losing track. Who's next? You were next. You've been waiting and waiting. I'm sorry.
Don't you think that the $500 property tax rebate is just number one, a tax shift? Because rather than having to collect more taxes somewhere else to make that up, that's all your numbers. So isn't it just a vote together to make all of us happy with the governor's budget? Because we're going
I
to
don't know. I'm
get
not
$500
a
back?
governor. We'd have to ask the governor. So that's, so you're saying you're not in favor of that? Because that's what I'm looking for,
Well,
input.
why collect it and give it back to them?
So,
I'm
you
just
don't
not
like
taking
that?
it.
Okay.
I agree.
Something to say about it.
Not even, okay, so far it doesn't seem very popular. All right, so do we have, I do have a question to ask you. It's a question that I have around the tax on services. And I hear, I am really struggling with that tax. And so I want to hear what you have to say. As I look at the tax on services, I've heard from a number of members of the business community saying that that is going to make them less competitive regionally and nationally. And so I did a little research, and there are 3 states that have a tax on services. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's New Mexico and North Dakota and Hawaii. And so their point is that that is going to make us less competitive and that they will lose business. So maybe we could break this up, if you don't mind, in the last few minutes. There's 2 elements here. There's the business to business, and then there's the tax on services that you would pay when you go get your car fixed. And I really want to hear your thoughts on that because of the fact that there's only 3 other states that are struggling with that. Stan?
I just think you have to be fair. Some businesses have a tax on service. They all should have a tax on service. Why are you putting one industry above another industry?
I think she had her hand up.
Oh, no, I just said I agree. Yeah, that was well put, thank you.
As I said before, if you're going to have a tax on business to business, at least don't have this regional variation. So
This would just be one big fat tax.
Okay. Because it's really hard to keep track of those.
So I I hear what your issue is.
Yeah, I guess the problem is where does the service take place and who buys it? Because I work for a company that has offices, 27 offices across the country, and we provide business-to-business services for major corporations that have